If you're a wealthy Italian businessman that accumulated some wealth one way or another, at some point you're gonna find yourself in a position of having to transport it. So which better way than a Maserati? You might be wondering, Fulvio, well, most likely they would use a quattroporte. This is not a quattroporte, and you're perfectly right. But today, I don't feel like just any Italian businessman. I feel like a flamboyant Italian businessman living in Côte d'Azur. So I take my bags filled with money, and here we are, putting them in the trunk of the GranCabrio. Now, I made that look easy, but in reality, most of the time, you'll have some of the cargo space occupied by these items. In fact, we have the first aid emergency kit, we have the tow hook and some other tools you need in case of a breakdown, and then we have this 610 euros option, which is a wind deflector that you mount on the rear seats, so that supposedly the cabin for the front passengers only, because when you put this on, the rear passengers cannot sit, there's no space, should be more aerodynamic, and therefore even with the roof down, you're gonna have a better feel overall. Now, before showing you how fast this car can move my money, let me show you why it moves that fast. Because under this hood, and actually, this is not a hood, this is a cofango. And let me explain you why. In Italy, cofano is the word we use for the hood, and parafango is the word we use for the fenders. Now, once I open this hood, you will understand that the reality of it is that this is not just a hood, but it opens up together with the sides. Hence, the mixture of the words cofano and parafango in this cofango. It's very interesting because stylistically it makes the car look more sleek, and when it comes also to maintenance, it makes some parts of the car more accessible. So once we do open the cofango, we find the Nettuno powertrain. It's a 3-liter V6 engine producing 542 horsepower. Now, Nettuno will bring you up to 316 kilometers an hour and will let you go from 0 to 100 in only 3.6 seconds. The way it does that, it's thanks to its 4-wheel drive system, which is actually very smart, and they managed to implement it with the body of the car quite well. Let me show you. And for that, you have to check out the position of some elements. First of all, the engine. As you can see, the engine starts here and is perfectly straight with the center of the wheel, making for ideal weight distribution. Furthermore, something else that Maserati did. In some front mid-engine cars, such as this one, because of the position of the engine as I just showed you, they tend to push differential a little bit forward. But in this one, if you look closely, you can see that the differential is perfectly in line with the engine and with the wheel itself. Once again, trying to have the least possible amount of hovering weight. Now, usually, I don't like to talk about consumptions, but in this case, Maserati used some F1-derived technology to improve efficiency, both when it comes to the performance and the consumptions. We're talking about a pre-combustion chamber, which of course means you have a secondary spark plug. So after all, this engine is a twin spark. Now, something else that they did to improve efficiency and consumptions is that in certain conditions, one bank will actually shut off, meaning you will actually drive with a 3-cylinders inline engine. If you really want to think about consumption, maybe you can buy the Folgore, which is the electric version, that goes up to 760 horsepower, but brings down the top speed. At the same time, though, you get faster acceleration of 0 to 100. A little interesting detail, the Maserati logo right here is actually the assisted driving systems radar. Definitely much better integrated into the front grille than what many other manufacturers do with this ugly black plate just sticking out somewhere. It's now time to check out the interiors, and getting in is quite easy. Being a convertible, you have infinite headroom. Now, a few things to mention when you are inside. First of all, getting the seatbelt is not that easy. On most cars of these kinds, coupe and convertibles of a certain level, you have a little retractable arm that actually gives you the seatbelt, so you can easily grab it. And here, being a tall guy, I have my seat all the way back. Despite having the seat all the way back, it's still a bit challenging to reach out and get the seatbelt. So I cannot imagine if you're a shorter guy having the seat even more forward, you have to reach back even more. It must be a bit challenging. The seat itself isn't too bad, but for a Grand Tourer, I think it could be a bit softer. Now, moving on to the dashboard, the moment you look in front of yourself, you find what one could call a minimalist dashboard. The steering wheel is very beautiful, and then you have just screens. No buttons whatsoever, other than the ones for the gear selector. You see, on most performance cars, you operate the gears mostly with the paddles. You can pull them at the same time for neutral and pull the right one for first or drive. Here, all of the gear operations are conducted by these buttons, which are, to be honest, straight out of the electric Fiat 500. They're not exactly pretty, they're not exactly nice to operate, because when you're maneuvering, you have to find the button and press it. It's not a very elegant operation, and you do have to press really hard, otherwise it will not select it. When it comes to the rest of the dashboard, as I said, it is quite minimalist, but the build construction is very, very good. There's no screeching whatsoever, everything is well put together, and nothing feels like it's gonna fall apart. So thumbs up for that, Maserati. And when it comes to the rest, everything is quite easy to use. I appreciate that we have a screen just for the climate control, so we don't have to fiddle with the system to find how to turn the temperature up, so also very good. The whole navigation and media is very smooth, very reactive. Here we have a lot of information about the engine that we can see while we're driving the car. And then on top of that, we have a configurable display which can act as a clock, as a compass, or you can see how much you're pressing the brake and accelerator pedal, as well as a G meter. Something else you will use the little screen for is to operate the soft top and to use the hair scarf. This will keep your neck warm, and it is a standard feature in the GranCabrio. Something I don't like though is the volume scroll. It's not very ergonomic and could have been better with just a knob. The fun time has now come to go and drive it. But before that, let me tell you about the price of this car, and to help me remember all the options, I have a list with me. So, the Folgore, the V6 version, starts at 235,000 euros. On top of that, we have a few accessories. The one that costs the most is the color. This beautiful red GranTurismo costs a whopping 33,000 euros. Is it worth it? You tell me, but I love the way it looks under the sun. Even at night, it's just so gorgeous. 1.4K Sport Design Package, that's the pedal and the Maserati light when you open the door. 4.2K, this wheel, Astro Design. 1.1 Comfort Package. 4.2 the Sonus Faber sound system, which actually won the EISA award on the MC20. 610 euros for the wind deflector, as we saw earlier. 1.8 for the surround camera, and 2.4 for the head-up display. That's a pricey head-up display. Brings down the total to 285,000 euros. So this Maserati is almost a 300,000 euros car. It's now time to drive the GranCabrio. When it comes to the power output, Nettuno does its job very well. Very little turbo lag, and actually what you might think is turbo lag is, in my opinion, a latency from the electronics. I feel like the pedal, even though you push it, the engine is trying to figure it out what's happening, and so it gives you the power when she feels it's a good time. And that's what makes this car so safe. Its electronics management is really impressive and works very well with all-wheel drive. And I will tell you something, even with all the ESC and traction control off, the all-wheel drive system in this car really can save your bottom. Once again, not a supercar, a Grand Tourer. You can put it in a corner a bit too fast, she will hold. Never have I felt oversteer, never have I felt understeer. Super well balanced. When it comes to braking power, this car is equipped with steel brakes. Once again, if you think about a supercar, not the best choice, but as a Grand Tourer, it's fine. Nevertheless, it is something to keep in mind when you're pushing the car. The powertrain really wants to make you push it, but when you reach a corner, keep in mind, these are steel brakes. Additionally, we have brake-by-wire system here, meaning that if the brakes start to heat up, you will not necessarily feel them being more spongy than usual, because the electronics will make the pedal feel more or less the same way, regardless of the conditions of the brakes. And now, let's see how she drives. Driving her in Corsa mode, the most extreme, and I have furtherly disabled all controls. but the car feels as safe as a kid's playground. You do occasionally feel some body roll, but that doesn't mean that the car will oversteer. It's probably a consequence of the air suspension, given that this car does have a lift system. The chassis is so well done that even in those moments when you feel a little bit of body roll, she reassures you because of her four-wheel drive system completely gripping to the ground. Unbelievable. What a pleasure to drive this car, especially knowing that it's purely you controlling it, and of course the mechanic, because as I said, all the controls are currently off and you can drive it without having any sorts of fear. I now got the message telling me that the brakes are a bit too hot and it's suggesting that I slow down. As I said, this is the downside of mounting steel brakes on a car that actually allows you to be pushed quite strongly. But after all, honestly speaking, who's ever going to buy this car and drive it as I'm driving it? I'm really putting her to the test to tell you guys how it feels, because she really can give you emotions. And I was a bit skeptical at the beginning when Maserati removed 2 cylinders from the GranTurismo, going from a V8 to a V6. But honestly, the emotions are still there, especially when paired up with this incredible chassis. Now, something I should mention are the driving modes, and the selector is located right here on the steering wheel opposite to the start and stop button, which in itself is blue, once again for the theme of the sea with the trident and Nettuno, you know, all inspired by the sea. So, the drive mode, the softest one is called Comfort. Speaks for itself, the most comfortable way to drive. Then GT. GT is a halfway mode, and it's what you get when you start up the car. It allows you to feel a bit more the presence of the engine and stiffens up slightly the chassis. We then move on to Sport. Of course, that's what you want for a more spirited drive. Everything is more responsive, the accelerator and the gearbox. Finally, we move on to Corsa. This is where you unleash the full power of the engine. Everything gets stiffer, from the suspensions to the steering wheel, although as I said, I wish it was even stiffer, and that's how you should do to enjoy the Maserati at its best. Plus, you press on this button, you go in manual mode, and then it's you and the car. Guys, what an exhilarating drive that was. Truly, truly a special car. The mix of comfort and passion and everything that it gives you, wow, I really recommend it. You should try it. In that case, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that I managed to give you an understanding of what this car feels like, and I hope to see you soon on my channel. Thank you.